somebody please
explain why Israelis are so obsessed with rape, or at least the word rape. I see it all the time from them on the farms. They call anyone they dislike, who they want to paint as getting owned as, quote unquote, the raped. Not just iDubbbz. And quite frankly, I've never seen any evidence of that. He is a disaster and a dumpster fire, and literally had his like life force essence um, drained by Sam. Fairly. Sam did not break any moral rules with what he did towards iDubbbz. Straight up. H3H3 broke more moral rules by accusing a couple of people of doing things that they had no evidence of. So, like, Sam kept it 100. And this is one of the reasons why, if you haven't checked it out, please check out Sam's Extreme Piece. From the promos that I watched, it looks really, really funny. I'm going to check it out sometime. And he really does kind of deserve it. He's been working very, very hard. He's been thinking very hard. He works out very hard. And it seems like with a little bit of movie magic, that excess that I warn about involving Sam Hyde is perfectly muted, but it's still detectable. You could still see it through the lines, It's just like, whew. Like, I'm not sure if I could work with Sam Hyde, He's just too much. He's too energetic, right? I felt like I was filled with the Holy Spirit yesterday. I noticed every single wound on my body heal miraculously. And this is after like 4 or 5 hours of just crying and bawling and shaking. And I did feel like I emptied myself, all of my pain and my strife, my misery, my regret. I emptied all that out. I achieved kenosis, and I was filled with the Holy Spirit. And maybe it had something to do with the increased blood flow to my face and around my body, and the tears just coating my beard. And but like, I was breaking out a little bit. I've been up, I've been stressed out, I hadn't showered. But after I cried and I cried and I cried, I was breaking out. It went away. The wounds that I incurred in my body from outside and accidents, it just went away. And this is not the first time this has happened. I'm sure I'm not the only person who experiences this, but I really do feel like I was filled with the Holy Spirit yesterday. Rest in peace, cats. I did go and I did check, and yes, 2 days before he left the website forever, he was noting that Null was extremely mad at him for doing something moral and reasonable, and it would have been fine if Null had deleted the post and then warned him. Instead, he decided to take his ego out. But anyways, back to Israelis. Remember when the recordings of that Palestinian prisoner getting raped to death with a hot iron rod leaked, and there was a civil conflict over the right to rape POWs in Israeli detention camps? I'd forgive you if you hadn't heard about it, but I assure you this is a real story of a real thing that happened. Multiple times, actually. Do you think it has anything to do with the fact that 600,000 of Israel's 9 million population are convicted pedophiles? I really think the Ching Chongs ain't too keen on the whole penny pinching kikery thing. They likely think, and they be right, that it's bad for business. There are no more dedicated pragmatists on Earth than the Han Chinese. And I think they're doing for Iran what we're doing for Israel, and both of it's happening under the scenes. Israel's completely censoring media reporting on casualties and damage, and I've been hearing more and more they're already beaten lines. When the third-party videos we're getting from, non-affiliated with the Israeli government people indicate Iran is just getting started. And Israel's still getting hit pretty hard. Iran's getting hit pretty hard too, but a lot of the targets are not the targets necessary for literal air superiority over Iran to do anything, US or Israeli. Israelis and their homes and businesses are getting blown up, sometimes by IDF anti-air Arrow 3 missiles circling back around. And the IDF is composed of and the Zionists are celebrating like the Twin Towers just got hit. It's a truly despicable country, and the IDF is composed of 3 terrorist groups that would terrorize British and Muslim non-combatants: the Haganah, the Lehi, and the Irgun groups. All terrorist groups, genuinely terrorist groups. Those groups came together under one name, and that name was the Israeli Defense Forces. It's not a regular military, it's not a regular army. There's some seriously sick stuff going on in the zeitgeist of the Israelis. And Israel itself is suffering from that legacy. You see, vast majority of Israelis were decent people. But because they are a project out in the middle of the desert and they can tell their citizenry, we're surrounded by enemies, do that decade after decade after decade while committing terrorist attacks that make everybody hate them. Then, like, sorry if you object to that, but that is the reality, whether you think it or not. Those poor Israelis were gaslit into thinking the things that the terrorists were doing in their own country were justified, and that the counterterrorism / terrorism that it inspired in the Arab population and the Kurdish population and the Turkish population is offensive and comes out of nowhere with no provocation. We all know that's wrong. It's a war of tens of thousands of people trying to shift the narrative when hundreds of millions of people are already fully aware of the manipulation that's taken place over the last 2 to 3 decades. People who are staunchly pro-Israel are not pro-Netanyahu anymore, and a lot of it has to do with Palestine. You can kvetch all you want, thinking that it's all about, oh, poor brown people. I gotta feel sorry for the brown people. Nah, man. Nah. Like, I wasn't really even looking for an excuse to hate Israel before Palestine. I really wasn't. If you know anything about my family and my history, we have always had very, very close relations with Jewish people. Always, ever since I was a little kid. My parents literally visited Israel before I was born. My name is Nathaniel. Okay? What the Israelis did to the Palestinians was evil, and if that is normalized, we're going to enter into a world far worse than the world that we were trying to prevent with things like the Geneva Convention. You know, anyways, I'm not special being upset about all this. Pray for the injured, pray for the homeless, pray for the terrorized on both sides. War is a racket, and no matter how many 19th century novels espouse the benefits of war, the stark reality is that war is hell. Apparently, and I've heard this from very credible and intelligent sources laid out in detail, in the 18th and 19th centuries, this is arising from the printing press and what it did to the zeitgeist of Europe and the world. In the 18th and 19th centuries, the novel was the equivalent of the radio or the TV, not an autobiography, not a statistical manual, but the novel, like 40,000 Leagues Under the Sea, for instance. That was the equivalent of the radio or the TV. No joke. 40,000 Leagues Under the Sea was like a fantasy. You have other stuff, you know, that's like Guns, Germs, and Steel, I think was one of them. It's like mainstream media. Pretty sure. I actually haven't read that book in full, so forgive me if I'm misjudging that book. I'm pretty sure it was super pro-war. Like saying that war helped evolve. I'm not sure. Excuse me. I'm sorry. I really need to I'm going to put that on my list. I'm going to go back and read that extremely dry book so I can make sure I get this right. So put a kibosh on that, okay? 86 that statement, please. I apologize. Okay, so I've watched an absolute ton of footage of the war, and there's something interesting to note. Helicopters are almost completely useless when it's not Vietnam or Afghanistan. All they're really capable of doing is shooting down bulky drones. I've never liked helicopters on a personal level, ever. Never liked them. But come to find out, my gut instinct was absolutely right. They exist for medevac and terrorism purposes, for specifically civilian terrorism, because non-civilian terrorism means an RPG-7 or 8 or whatever on their shoulder that would, you know, pose enough of a threat that the helicopters would be scared and not go into that area, and then you'd strike them from stealth bombers from 30,000 feet or whatever. But yeah, helicopters are lame, annoying, loud, and that loudness alerts everybody around them. That's the exact same thing. It's just like if there was actually an apocalypse, all the people that modified their cars for the engines themselves, not just the exhaust system, to be loud, they're like the first person to get robbed. You know, I thought about that a lot, but I'm always running weird scenarios in my head, so probably not going to be very applicable. But yeah, and I guess crashing into planes in Washington D.C. too, apparently. I watched part of the BB Files before it got pulled, and it has footage of Miriam Adelson saying that her life was in jeopardy regarding Netanyahu's criminal investigations. I've also noted something that I recognized that may or may not be accurate. And I've said this before. There's a huge secular/religious split between Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. Now, this part is true. And Trump has been the most pro-Jerusalem faction president since the 80s. This is mostly true. Now, it could be he's saving face and letting Netanyahu dig his own grave to the point where he's no longer able to lash out at anybody. Like Miriam Adelson, who is literally Trump's number one or number two donor behind Elon Musk. Maybe being told Israel has it covered and sitting back. Maybe it's not Netanyahu telling him that Israel has it covered, And he's just saying Netanyahu and I are in constant communication, and Netanyahu's spending hours a day begging him. And he's just like, we'll see. What's in it for me? What you got on the table, BB? You got anything to offer me? Maybe. Who knows? I'd like to think that Trump's actually really pragmatic about this, and he's trying to think about his legacy, actually. That's what's been holding him back. And God bless people like Tulsi Gabbard. I'm shocked she's not out of the government yet. Another good sign. Another good sign, because she already threatened to quit if we were actually going for it. I've heard like 3 or 4 different reports saying, yeah, we're doing it. It turns out it's the same report saying that Trump has created plans and not greenlit them yet. Duh, he's probably talking about everybody around the world. All of his business partners. He's probably very curious about what other people on the planet would do. And he's probably talking to his constituents. He was the #1 podcaster. And one of the reasons why our confidence was increased in voting for Trump is because he went around to the down-to-earth grassroots podcast. Well, some of them. Not like Kamala Harris going on Call Her Daddy wasn't grassroots. And Trump going on a few of the podcasts weren't grassroots. But Joe Rogan stuff, you may not agree that it's grassroots. It really is grassroots, bottom-up stuff. Stuff that really will inspire massive amounts of people, although I hate to say it, Joe Rogan's kind of in his flop era regarding his stand-up comedy and stuff like that. In general, something's kind of off. His inspiration, his muse has somehow shrunk from his life, and he's no longer quite as exciting and interesting and inspiring and funny and fun to listen to, I hate to say. And I really do actually genuinely despise the obsession with aliens, because I know where that comes from. And like, Katz loved aliens, but he made it so funny. I was literally like bawling like a baby when I remembered what he showed us in chat of the of the Toxoplasmosis gondii amoeboids traveling from their planet and crashing into America, into the Earth. On a spaceship when there are mammoths going around. You probably saw that in the slideshow yesterday. There are cool ways to do it, but there are like alien people that are obsessed with like probing. You know what I'm saying? Like, what did we talk about at the beginning of this episode? I must have forgotten. Well, I guess I'm not noticing anything today. Sorry, I lost my place. Alright. I love the term Freudian slip. It's synonymous with telling on yourself, only through subtext and accidental admission. And Freud was basically telling on himself about his own Hasidic Oedipal complex. That's kind of how they kept it in the family, kept the blood pure. Gotta love it when people talk about purity of race. Gotta love it when people talk about that sort of stuff. It's funny thinking about how the Confederates patronized Jewish slave traders so much and then bought extra votes in the American democratic system. Every 5 slaves, 3 votes. Fascinating thing to think about. Genuinely fascinating thing to think about how America would have looked like today if that particular slavery with 3/5 law had never been abolished. Just hypothetically think for a second. What would America look like? What would the world look like? You know, the nature of truckers' schedules and diets leaves them extremely susceptible to propaganda. Maybe that's why truckers have been acting like the new socialist union strikers and keep throwing temper tantrums. Now, before you get upset, at the end of the day, cheap gas is achieved through war. It always has been. And lithium incidentally replaces the driver. Everyone is suffering. Everyone is responsible for some part of the system running smoothly. The best way of achieving your goals is getting involved in local politics, not blocking traffic and crying and laying on your horn. Really isn't. I don't think those trucker protests have accomplished anything the entire time. They were just annoying. And I do want to see truckers have better lives. I do want to see them have better diets so they get paid better, prep their food, get better trucks, not have to spend 20 years paying off their truck and then have it break down in another 20 years so it becomes like a beautiful yard ornament. I can go drive to the trailer park and go like a couple of roads down away from the trailer park and see this huge, beautiful old tractor trailer truck. It's gorgeous. It has the most beautiful grill. It's huge. It's really, really, really pretty. And it's very old, and it very likely doesn't run anymore, I want to see truckers have autopilot, stuff like that, and then still get paid to basically, maintain the area. But the autopilot has to work. It can't just crash constantly. And we're not investing in anybody's lives. Straight up. It'd be great if truckers could and were encouraged to have a fridge with a bunch of meal prep in it, and then have the time and have the energy and have the money and have the resources. Like, truck stops could be bigger and kinder, and it wouldn't be like a nasty place filled with prostitutes, but instead like a place where people can actually like the old pit stops in the Silk Road, people can actually refresh themselves. I don't know, man. I don't know the solution to that because it's a macro problem. Our entire country, our entire system is suffering. Our entire economy is suffering, of which truckers are very important, but not necessarily a support beam given the way that we've moved. We've moved towards a vapor of a society. Like, it doesn't matter if people are suffering or starving, can't afford a place to live, can't afford food. Some people will still continue to grow food and farm cattle in their backyards and stuff. And other people will just suffer, and the Calvinist mindset of America will deem the ones suffering as unworthy victims and deserving of their fate, and vice versa for the rich. Oh well. But apparently that pales in comparison to what AI is doing to people's brains, no less of which is Josh Moon's gray matter. MIT just published a study that indicated ChatGPT users had the lowest brain engagement and consistently underperformed at neural, linguistic, and behavioral levels. I talked yesterday about how our imaginations are polluted with artificial imagery and our creativity is at an all-time low. But there really seems to be a shifting baseline for humanity. Well, excuse me, I think that was 2 days ago. We're practically automatons these days, and that is not a good thing. And I've watched good people, capable people, become vastly degraded by it, and that's why I resent it. That's exactly why I resent Zionism. Isn't anything inherent? Judge people based on what they do and the fruits that their fields produce. Oh, and Rolling Rock, I do appreciate your patronage, but me noting that Null being an asshole to cats was one of the last interactions he had on this earth is not me blaming him for Katz's suicide exclusively. Katz was suffering. His baby mama stole his child away from him. He likely saw a lot of pain when he was a corrections officer. And worst of all, he was the nicest member of a website that's gotten worse and worse. It's very disingenuous when you say that. And this is exactly why the people who hate me constantly fire blanks while claiming they're perforating my organs. You're better than lying. You don't need lies. Nobody needs lies. Reality is perfectly fine for everything that you need if you pay attention. And frankly, what's even the point of Kiwi Farms anymore? To pad some 5'5" hammerhead shark's ego so he can smack whoever he wants across the face with impunity, regardless of what they did or do for the zone? Null's a piece of shit who literally breaks his website more and more, as well as moving towards Zionists who bribe him, the downfall of many domains over time. But he did not kill Katz. He only made one of the last instances on his website a bad one, that's all. In fact, I distinctly remember an opiate addict. Hold on, give me a second. He was actually subscribed to this channel on his Meow channel, not on his Arium channel. And I know that for 100% fact. Maybe it was my fault. Who knows? In fact, I distinctly remember an opiate addict on your website that convinced a few of you I had bullied a friend to suicide. So why not go ahead and believe that? Why not? Go ahead. Go ahead. Push it forward. See what that gets you in life. You see, you can do whatever you want because Kiwi Farms doesn't have a Kiwi Farms thread. It doesn't matter that your society is degrading and the real resources are dwindling. Lash out like people like Null do all the time. Don't let morality or honesty stop you. It certainly hasn't in the past. I'm really, really pissed off at Null right now, and I have every right to be. Null should be slapped the same way he slaps other people for no reason. He's a small man behind a machine. A real Wizard of Oz, if you will. And besides, Null knows what he did. And he doesn't need you maggots squirming around in his wound. Sorry to go off, but I really am astounded by the audacity of some people. You think keeping the lights on matters if the establishment is a trash heap and gets worse and worse every year? You think you're anything but a crackhead seeking instant gratification when you lash out like that? Null's worthless and so are you. Stack as much fiat as you want. Fantasize about taking $1 million from state coffers. It doesn't matter. Go in the wrong direction. You've had a massive migrant influx of deviant liars to the website since October 7th, and the subsequent Zionist activation that everybody is disgusted with as life gets harder and harder for them every year. And these parasites have the nerve to demand us to do more. 2020 was a golden year, a year of great sneeding. But more and more, no matter how much I didn't want to accept it, I must realize it's over. Kiwi Farms is dead. Null has the same problem Trump has. He's the most influenced by the last person he listened to. I know. I was that person at one point. And that's exactly why Zionists are flooding around him with praise and gifts. Thinking about burning my Kiwi Farms merch. We'll see. That doesn't mean I hate the people of Kiwi Farms. Kiwi Farms real. Just its corrupt, incompetent leader that does nothing to protect the people from harm. I'm the bow. Shut it down. Shut the hell up, you pudgy little piece of dung on the bottom of society's boot. Anyways, I gotta log off. I'm pissed. Alright, y'all. For what it's worth, cheers.